What's up, everybody? Today I've got another video for you that is a drumline review. So back in the fall, I had some directors reach out and send me a video of their drumline and their performance. And I basically went through and created a judge's tape for them. And so that's what we're going to watch today. If we haven't met yet, my name is Dustin. I have been teaching marching percussion for nearly 20 years. And I make these videos so that band directors who maybe don't have full-time percussion staff or instructors that are just getting started out has access to drumline tips and tricks so that they can make sure that their drumline is fully contributing to the success of their entire ensemble. With that, in this video, we go over a lot of things. How to tune your basses, how to make sure that you are playing your shots correctly, and because that's one of the easiest things that judges call out. And we've got several other things I talk about visually with this ensemble, just to kind of tweak some things and make sure that you don't have anything that's easy for judges to call out, and you're making sure that everything's just tightened up and clean. So once again, I hope you can learn something from this video. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. And without further ado, let's get into it. Enjoy. Asleep dreaming. If possible, I would try to choreograph any of the bass drum movements that I could, because of it just I feel like it should be together. It looks like they're waking up. Maybe 1 and 2 did it together. Bass 3 it starts moving around here. I've watched this a couple times already. So he starts moving around here a little bit before they actually play. So anything that can be done to just make sure that's choreographed. Also, it almost looks like 1 and 2 are maybe at a 2-step interval, and 2 and 3 are at a 3-step. If you needed suggestions on which one to do, I would say bass drum should be probably a 3-step, and maybe they just set up a little wrong. So, I don't know if that happens a lot, but just making sure that that's set up correctly and give that good first impression. Everything's done together before the show actually gets going, will be beneficial for those judges. They kind of know what to expect and before they actually hear it.
You may begin your performance of the 2025 UIL Region 22 Marching Band Contest.
Oh, those bass drums are heavy, but just shaking your head around. Any movement, it's such a big drum, it's very distracting. I don't know if you've spent time on tuning the bass drums, but maybe trying to get that first drum, the top drum, that pitch up and far away from the bottom drum would help those speak a little bit better. Maybe like a root 5th octave type tuning, something that fits with the music of the ensemble might be suggested there. But they sound a little muddy, and I'm not sure it's the players, it might just be the tuning. That's something that I've had ensembles that I've struggled with to really dial that in. But nailing that down, like I said, root 5th octave tuning would create that chord in that kind of power chord there in the bass drums to help them speak a little bit more. And I don't know, it might just be the recording, but I don't hear them a lot. And maybe that's a good thing, with bass drums, but sometimes you do want to hear them. You want to hear that bass voice, and it helps when the tuning is far enough apart where each drum gets to speak. What's there something? So shots. Don't know if you've gotten this comment before from any percussion judges, but the easiest thing, if I could fix one thing about this drumline for the last show, that would be the rim shots. A couple things that I theorize, my hypothesis is that's happening. One, we didn't define where to hit the shot on the stick. So for simplicity, I would say try and hit it just where the stick starts to taper, wherever that is on your stick. Some tapers, a little bit higher up, but I would say somewhere right just below the taper, maybe a 1/2 inch below the taper. You don't want to be hitting your shots down here consistently, and up here probably not that great either. So A standard shot would be right in this area. So whatever you define for them would be fine. And they should pull back the same way they would play a regular note. A lot of students have a tendency to be like, I want to play rim shots, and they, just swing it or they hit it harder. They don't have to do any of that. Okay, they just pull it back and they just flatten out the wrist a little bit. They hit the drum and the rim at the same time, rim shot, and a lot of that will clean up if you fix how they hit the shot and where they hit the shot. This will help the sound of the shot, the timbre of the shot, be the same, and the timing will help when they hit it the same way. If I could fix one thing, I would fix that. That's the easiest thing for a judge to call out and talk about, is how the shots weren't together. I mean, they can talk about the music not being together and stuff like that, but the shots are loud and they're in their face and they hear that clack, clack. We don't want that. We don't want the shots to pop. Doom, chop, doom, chop. I speak drum a little bit, That stick visual clicking, a little distracting. It didn't sound like it was together. It sounded, not characteristic with what was going on. They ended that phrase, and then you've got this, and then they put that in. So to me, I'd probably find another spot for that if they love that visual. Um, but if you think it's going to throw them off for the whole for the rest of the season, it might not be worth changing it. But a little bit of distraction there. So I noticed, I've watched this several times and I didn't notice this before. Those snares, you had them go out to the lines to match up. Unless you got a visual comment that that was needed, I might consider not doing that. And like I said, take this with a grain of salt because it's the end of the season, right? You don't want to change a bunch of stuff that's going to throw them off. But listening wise, it's harder to listen. It's harder for the younger players to listen into the center if they're farther away. And right now it looks like they're at about a 4-step interval. So that's maxing it out. You really don't want your drum line to be at a 4-step, especially the snares. Usually quads and basses are going to be at 3 steps, and your snares are going to be at a 2-step. So if it's not necessary to move them out there because they're in the drum line, I think they're safe from visually, that not affecting those lines. I know you're trying to get them in those lines, but I would try to keep them closer together and just maintain their intervals for listening and balance and simplicity's sake.
Hey guys, just wanted to jump back in here real quick. If you are enjoying this content and you would like to see more stuff, or you would like to have your own review of your own ensemble this year, I have an online community called Directing the Line. It is a community that is just for directors to get percussion support all year long. Right now, you can get access to it with a complete audition system to start your season off right. I've got exercises, I've got a game plan to implement immediately, and I've got a course for your students to go through to get ready for the auditions before they happen. So if you're interested, I'm going to leave a link in the description below so you can check that out, and I look forward to seeing you there.
The drummer snare on the right is closing that interval down a little bit as he moves across there too. Just those shots being together. I like the contrary motion. Bass is going one way, quad's going the other way. Anything we can do to set those drums down just really together and commit to this lunge. That lunge is kind of just stepping out. If that's how it's defined, that's cool, but it doesn't seem like it's defined that way. So I would just try to make sure everybody, puts their drum down and then attacks that on one. And something to think about is maybe moving to count one or whatever count they step out on. Make sure they place it on that instead of moving on it, they move to it so they arrive on that count that's designated for them to step out on. just having a little more energy through the feet and through the body to get that lunge out there, so that everybody looks uniform across the battery. Something else to think about is the concert bass drum placement down here in the pit. Probably could just move the vibe, and I don't know if those are two vibes. It looks like it is. Move those in a little bit closer together, but have that concert bass facing the crowd, because unless it's turned that way because it was too loud, you're not really going to hear it if the sound's going kind of up into the end zone that way. So bass drums are real finicky. The sound travels, like, you got to pay attention to which direction it's going. And if you want some more impact and you want some more, that bass sound, that bass drum sound, having that drum angled toward the press box will help you achieve that. I would also consider just putting the front ensemble in a line. Maybe not do it this season, but because front ensemble is so visual, they should be kind of watching each other to make sure that they're playing in time as opposed to just listening, especially for attacks. So when the ensemble, that marimba, maybe he starts it off and he gives some preps, and then they're all going to prep together as they watch. And so if they're in two lines unnecessarily, it makes it harder for them to watch for those visual cues and make sure that they're aligned, with attacks, especially, and making sure all their notes are aligned. So it also creates a better listening environment if they can listen side to side instead of forward to each other. And that's not to say they should listen forward in general. They should listen back to the battery if they're playing, but having them in a line, if possible, might help make them gel a little bit better. So this moment, this might be me being, a battery guy, a drum guy, and just want to hear drums, but this moment is a little underwhelming for me. And I think it's because the battery never quite reaches the same like forte that the band is trying to achieve. And here's my line of thinking on this. So you've got all this color. You've got a lot of, you got double swing flags out there with the guard, and you've got this huge moment. You got this lunge going on, and the battery seems to be playing it like a mezzo forte. Maybe you've gotten some comments the battery was too loud, and so they backed down, but I think they might have backed down too much, because hearing the drums playing those open rhythms and open rolls and stuff like that is part of what makes the moment and gives it cold chills. And if the band is on the soft side and you can't get them to play any louder, I would at least have the drums kind of on the top end of balanced. Right now I feel like they're really underbalanced, and they could give a little bit more to make that moment crescendo, not just it's crescendoing visually, and he doesn't crescendo audibly, okay, and musically. So anything that, I don't know if, maybe they dropped out, maybe they didn't know the part or something like that, that could be a thing too, but I feel like they can contribute just a little bit more. I want to hear them a little bit more, especially all the way in the back like that. Really the bass drums, like, I'm not hearing the bass drums at all. I don't know if the book is leaving them out there, but putting some bass note in there, right there on that triplet. That last boom, boom, just seemed like we weren't. It makes them come across as not confident in their parts. So whatever that means, it might not be true, but that's how it kind of portrays to me, is that they didn't know the parts, or they were just told to play quieter, and so now they've been crippled as far as, contributing to the ensemble. Yeah, it's a nice moment. Okay, so a couple things here with the quad spacing. My first suggestion, yes, would be to not have them facing each other. A couple reasons for that. One, the judges are in the press box and the crowd is in the stands. They're facing each other, communicating with each other, and the sound is going towards each other. All right. So the performance is diminished. They look small on the field. Second thing is, quad drummer on the right, as I'm looking at the screen, looks like he's having a hard time holding the drums. Get it? They're heavy as all get out. But if we turned them around to face the front, that would be hidden a little bit. So, yes, he should stand up taller. He should stand up straight. If he's not physically able to do that, this would help not be able to see that as much if he was facing this way. Now, if the part goes back and forth, they can still look at each other and communicate with each other, pass the part off, point at each other when the other one's playing, like whatever you want to do there. Possibilities are endless. But either way, I would have them, if you want this to be a moment and you want them to be known that they're playing a part, they're kind of hidden right now because they're facing each other. So I would at least have them heads up, facing forward, and then they can kind of go back and forth and play with that. That would be something I would change for the last show or shows, because this moment could be a little bit more, and it's diminished because they're facing each other. Now the next part coming up here. Okay, so they face forward to the end, and then they turn around and go backwards. What you might consider doing, don't know if this is too big of a change, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. You might consider just leaving them here out of the way of the guard, because watching them go back to the back set is kind of, it draws the visual focus back there instead of drawing it to the front where you have the winds playing their feature. So one of two things: either turn around and wait and don't move and then move, like give it 4 counts or 8 counts and then move back, or hold them there because they don't play the next section coming forward when the whole drum line marches forward. So hold them there in their spot, and then when the rest of the battery comes to meet them, have them turn around and play their part at that point. It's a little distracting watching them go backfield immediately and then turn around again. So that move right there, where they're taking big steps and coming forward, it's going to be so important to have them really be intentional about where they are putting the notes. Ba, ba, da, 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 da. Because that's a very exposed moment. Easy for a judge to come in there and notice that is not together, that is not played together well. Make sure that they're playing all at the same height and they're being very intentional. They're not getting distracted by the big steps, and they're being very intentional about where they are placing those notes. Got to hold the intervals there when we go backwards. The other thing would be to make sure they keep their upper body straight to the sidelines, square to the sidelines. When they're moving back, they have a tendency to turn and march backwards like that. So keeping the fix I would suggest for that is telling them to keep their toes pointed at the sidelines while they move. That will help their hips also stay square to the sidelines. Love Center Snare's performance there. He got down and got jiggy with it. I would say mix it up a little bit. Don't just stay down there in the one lunge position. Kind of turn and get your head up. Get the head up and communicate with the crowd and ram I always tell the drumline, ram the notes down their throats, just elevate that performance from the field. Because yes, you're looking down and that's cool, but then also make sure that you're communicating and getting that performance up off the ground. Love that he's getting into it though. That's awesome. Yeah, really cool show. So a couple of notes. I would say the thing to work on for next season, probably not going to be able to fix it this season yet, is going to be rolls and double strokes. At that speed that they were playing right there, those double stroke rolls or diddles should be really stroked out in 2 wrist turns per note with a little bit of finger. Right now it sounds like they're using a lot of arm and a lot of finger to get those out, which is making the notes sound heavy on the first note, and then the second note of each hand that they're playing sounds lighter. Okay, it also distorts the rhythm from taking the notes that should be spaced like this and moving the second one closer in, because they're not controlled and they're not consistent every time they play it, which creates that fuzzy sound that you're hearing when they play those double stroke rolls. So the technique for playing open, square, duple, double stroke rolls, 16th note type stroke rolls, and then triplet stroke rolls is going to be different. And those are nuanced things that probably need to be worked on for next season. But those things are probably not going to be fixed right now. But, learning how the stick should move and the grip should change when you're playing rolls versus just, regular single stroke note type patterns is going to be something to work on in the off season. The other thing I would suggest, and this is me being a drum guy, okay? So, take it with a grain of salt. If you don't want to change the music there, totally fine, okay? But the last note I feel like could be more impactful if it was shorter. My rationale is that the drum line, since the drums have such short responses in their notes, they can't make that last note last as long as a quarter note or a half note or whatever it is, dotted quarter. I don't know, whatever the note is written at. They can't fill up that whole space unless you put more notes in there, which I don't really think you want to do. So my suggestion would be to make that last band note like a 16th note and have it be punchy so that the drum line can help contribute the effect there. So bop, 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 and then boom, which I love the bass drop. That's like all-time favorite. I would put it in every show and people would get tired of it. But side note, get distracted. I would because it almost sounds like you didn't end together because the drum line ended and then the band ended. If we got those two lined up, you would have more of an impact and a final closing note, a statement to the show. So, yeah, I like the show. I like the music. I like the arrangements. I think that there's some things to do to work on in the off season, technique wise, to get them, at a higher level. Namely, just how they probably play like double stroke rolls and how they think about that and interpret that. Playing together, but things are working for you guys, and I think it's a cool show. I really do. But I hope that commentary helps. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to let me know. I would love to discuss more with you if you have questions on how to implement certain things. I'd be glad to talk some ideas with you, and I'll send you a handout as well if you haven't seen that already on some points just broken down so you can kind of quickly review them. And thanks for letting me contribute to your show. I hope my feedback helps.